Hello, everybody. Marty Richards with Greater Richland Tourism here today, offering you an updated and fresh, why do we call it that? And today we're talking about Hell Hollow, as you can see. Hell Hollow on your way. It's a really cool, very nice drive, little up and down as you'll learn, drive on your way to Oakwood Fruit Farm. So how did Hell Hollow get its name? There's a couple of different variations of the story, but the first story is that early in the 1900s, there was a resident, a fella that lived on Hell Hollow that was known to be extremely cantankerous, maybe not the nicest guy in the world that you'd want running the welcome wagon, was a little bothersome. So he lived here on Hell Hollow for several years and then moved. And during his time here, the road allegedly got its name. What's interesting is that that same individual moved to an area in Sauk County and moved to another rural area. And the road that he lived on there also got the name Hell Hollow. So sometimes when things are coincidences, but they happen a couple times, maybe that's a tendency. The other story, and actually there's a couple here, the other story, and I've heard this one, it was told to me when I was a little kid by one of the residents of Hell Hollow, Lauren Davis. He lived there most of his life, farmed from the time when they had horse-drawn wagons and used horses up to when tractors were used widely. And Lauren Davis explained to me once, and I've seen this from others, that because the farmers at the top of the ridge that had fields down in the valley, it was so hard and treacherous to make the journey down to their fields and to other things they had to tend in the valley. They said, yep, that valley, it's hell getting in and it's hell getting out. And I've heard that repeatedly, so that's another way that perhaps it might have got its name. But the third one, and the most recent one, that spans the generation from about 1950 to the early 2000s, and I remember this as a child here, there was a resident that lived on Hell Hollow, and his house was way in the back, off from the road, so he really was secluded. Really, literally, no one locally knew him. And the rumor was, and apparently there was some truth to it, he was a mad scientist from Chicago, and he had bought that land, had come, lived on that property, and he spent many years there. The buildings had no windows that faced the roadway. The house itself was off the road and up in the back of the valley, really secluded for what we don't know for sure. Maybe some experiments that a mad scientist would conduct. And that all kind of fell into maybe this was just lore and legend of the time until that individual sold the property. Once when the property was sold, the new purchasers came on, started to clean the property up. And as they got into the buildings, they realized there were some extremely hazardous materials and explosive materials that, yes, indeed, he had been conducting some experiments and different works with. In the early 2000s, at the time of the purchase, and I can recall this, the Richland County Hazardous Waste and Disposal team had to be called in. There were other agencies brought in from statewide to deal with those explosive materials. School was called off, and basically a radius of about 4 miles was cleared because of the threat of explosion and the danger of the materials that were removed. So yes, indeed, there was actually a scientist. I don't know that he was mad. He never bothered anybody, but there was a scientist living on Hell Hollow. So you can take your pick which version you believe in, but they all really do line up with why we call it Hell Hollow. So for Greater Richland Tourism, I'm Marty Richards. Let's everybody have a great day.